I wasn't one of these people that always thought I was going to be a nurse. I didn't have a calling. I've been a matron for education. My practice looks very different. So my practice as a nurse is in a leadership kind of capability. So when you move out of what you perhaps perceive to be like a nurse in terms of...
Hi, I'm Nzi and welcome to A Nurse Like Me podcast. And I've got the beautiful Kat here with me today. Kat, would you like to introduce yourself?
It's so great to meet you and be with you today. I'm Kat Tolfree. I'm an adult nurse by background, and I've been a nurse since 2009.
Oh, brilliant. So what made you decide to be a nurse?
That's a good question. So for me, back kind of when I was younger, I wasn't one of these people that always thought I was going to be a nurse. I didn't have a calling. In actual fact, I was really interested in the fact I could perhaps just travel as a nurse, and I could go and live in lots of different countries and have a kind of big worldwide adventure traveling life. And I thought I'd be a pretty good nurse as well. So that's what attracted it to me. I liked working with people. So it's kind of not that traditional, like, oh, I've just got this inside feeling.
It's a calling.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And can I just ask what type of nurse you are? You mentioned being an adult nurse, but where do you currently work?
Yeah, so currently I specialise in education and have done so for the past 10 years. And education based in like what we call the practice setting, so within a hospital environment as opposed to academia.
Oh, brilliant. That is so fascinating. Because I think when people think of education, especially coming from nurses, you think of it in like a lecture room or, you know, in a school building of some kind, like a school nurse who teaches people about health. But can you elaborate on that? Because that's quite interesting, actually. So you help to educate. Is that educating nurses or is that the public? Who is it exactly that you guys train or teach?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about the story, I guess, of kind of what I've done in the specialism, because that might help you. If I just sort of launch into what I'm doing now, it might be like, oh, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I found myself in a junior, like working clinically as a junior sister, and found I really liked supporting students, loved working with them, loved seeing people like develop and grow, and just like improving practice. Really, that was really important to me. And it was somebody I worked with, one of the lead education nurses, who tapped me on the shoulder and said, do you know what, I think that you'd be really good at like this is a speciality. And it never crossed my mind until then. And if it wasn't for that person kind of doing that, I still wonder, like, would I be where I am? So I'm really grateful for her kind of highlighting something to me that I didn't really think of. And I'd always like tell people it's really important, if you see somebody that, you know, is doing something they love and perhaps they don't realize or they're good at, just tell them, because you never know what's going to happen. And that like led me to my first job in education. So I moved organizations. I started in a brand new organization, started in a brand new specialism, and I worked as what was called a practice development nurse. That was my first role in education. That was working with nurses across different departments, supporting them when they kind of in the post-reg side of things. So teaching study days, working with them on the ward if they were newly qualified, if they had competencies, thinking about how we integrated like safety learning, patient experience learning. It was really practical, but I was really like kind of thrown in the sense of like, oh my gosh, this is a new organization, this is a new role, how on earth do I fit in with all of these teams? Like, you know, I'm working in a little team, but then I've got 5 teams that I'm working with, you know, like what have I done the right thing? So that was like the first role. And then since then I've done a variety of roles. I've led on student learning, I guess, in a hospital setting. I've led on some different projects in education. I've been a matron for education, so that covers kind of a whole portfolio of everything from Euro Band 2 care assistant learning all the way up to consultant practice. I've been off and worked at Health Education England, and now I lead an education academy. So it's quite varied.
Yeah, no, that is so good to see, like, nurses in a different setting than what we're familiar with. And actually, it seems that you've got a vast array of experience, and that's helped you to kind of be where you are. And you mentioned something that really touched me. So you mentioned about people just being more, I guess, intentional about telling when they see something in someone. That's literally how I became a nurse. I just was fascinated. Yeah, so my background is in law, and I was fascinated by like the health side of the medical reports that I'd read, because I was in personal injury law. And because of that, I went to work for the NHS 111 as a health advisor. This like, it's the HCA version of what the clinical nurses do. And there, someone was like, "You are so brilliant with the way you speak to people. I think you would be an amazing nurse." I had never considered nursing prior. And I have family members that are nurses, and like, you know, granddad was a nurse, my grandmother was a nurse. So I have a lot of family members that are like in that field, but it never crossed my mind. But when they said that, I was like, actually, it makes sense, because my personality is so much for that. Like, I love nurturing people. I love like taking care of people, and just that face-to-face contact, because working in a law firm, you're like in an office all day, you just see your colleagues, whereas I love like being out there and, you know, sitting down with people, that more social side of things. But yeah, when you mentioned that, I was like, you're absolutely spot on, because actually I wouldn't be a nurse if it wasn't for that as well. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. What would you say are some of the challenges that you've faced in your role? For anyone that's thinking of going into that role, what are some of the things that they need to kind of be more aware of to do the job kind of more effectively?
That's a really good question. And one of the things that I guess I experienced and I've kind of supported people with over the years is the transition. So your identity and your role transition, when you move out of what you perhaps perceive to be like a nurse in terms of a clinical facing role, into doing something different. And that's not just in education, it's kind of in a whole variety of settings that are not necessarily what you would deem as a, you know, a bedside role or a clinical facing role. And people really, and I guess kind of struggled with, you know, actually what is my identity now, and am I still a real nurse, and how do I add value? So I think it's really important to think about the skills that you bring as a nurse that are kind of some really invisible skills sometimes. So your ability to problem solve, your ability to prioritize, your ability to manage difficult situations. You know, you are so much more as a nurse than we actively speak about. And I think it's really important that you help, you know, either you look inside or you kind of get a coach or a mentor and have some discussions to pull out like, what are those key skills that actually you do, and what values do you have, and therefore trying to apply it to something different, because there's so much we can do as nurses.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of the time as well, imposter syndrome seems to be very frequent amongst nurses, and we're more than competent at doing a lot, but I think sometimes it's seeing that is difficult, and actually believing that we're capable, that sometimes can be difficult. And I think if you've never been encouraged, with, I think is the right word to use it, if you've never been encouraged to step up or to see the good qualities that you have or the transferable skills that you may have, that sometimes causes people to shy away from different roles, and they get very comfortable with where they are, and they feel that maybe this is all I can do. This is, you know, what I can, you know, what I'm good at. So I think you're absolutely right in saying get help to see what else you could do, and like picking out the values and the things that are so crucial to stepping up and getting into those kind of positions. Did you have to do any courses to kind of get into that education side of things?
Yeah, so before I started in my first education role, I had done at the time what was called a mentorship qualification. So it's now your practice assessor supervisor training. So that helped me because I had kind of a bit of a understanding about learners and how to support learners in practice. And when I did my first job, I didn't actually have to have my teaching qualification. So I think there's a worry or a thought that like, oh gosh, like I don't have any experience of teaching, and if I'm going to work in education, surely I need my teaching qualification. So, you know, to begin with, absolutely not. But that is something that, you know, I developed relatively early on as working in education, because it is so useful for working in a speciality. And you'll find that, you know, hopefully you can get good support to do that from various organisations.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, because I think some nurses as well, they do have some form of teaching qualification. So I know, like I work in the community, so I don't know a lot about the acute settings and the training that they do there. But in the community, you are responsible for a lot of like the training that the support workers have to get. So with the mandatory and statutory trainings, the nurses have to oversee that. So when I was a care manager, I had to get the trainer course to be able to teach certain things, and everything was specific. So if I wanted to train the staff on manual handling, I had to get a specific trainer for that, as well as like medication administration. I had to get a different trainer for that. Thankfully, it's indefinite, which I thought it wasn't. I thought it was every 3 years, but it turns out that company, it's indefinite in that they review it and then they renew it without you having to pay, which is why it's a little bit more expensive. But then I found out that actually to teach other people outside of your organization, you need to also do something that's called AET. I'm not too familiar with that, but I just know the abbreviation, and that I think is like a teaching qualification that enables you to train not only your teams, but other teams within other organizations. And I think there are limits in terms of what you can teach, because again, stuff like medication administration, you do need to have that trainer to do it. But yeah, it's interesting to know that you didn't have to have a teaching qualification to get into your role, which I think is brilliant.
No. You know, the other thing to say is that there are a whole like variety of teaching qualifications you can do, from like a level 2, well, probably higher, level 4 probably. You can kind of do the trainer learning, which will help you, but you can go all the way up to doing your master's in education. So you know, the type of teaching qualification that I've got enables me to go over to university, and essentially is the equivalent of being a university lecturer. And so it doesn't matter what I teach, I've got the kind of understanding of developing education, delivering education, which is then really, really transferable, you know, across all sorts of things.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was just going to ask then, in terms of your NMC registration and like your revalidation, because I think that's something that often people worry about when they go outside of acute settings, is will you be able to revalidate? Are you still a nurse if you're doing education? I find that in my role in the community, so right now I work as a clinical lead nurse, I was a bit worried when I went in that role, but the NMC pretty much reassured me that clinical management roles I'm still able to get my revalidation done under that role. I don't need to go and do the extra shift anymore on the bank, so I can still work in my clinical management role and still meet the criteria for revalidation. Is that the same thing with your role as well, or is it slightly different?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you kind of look at the NMC code, you look at it in terms of how does your role apply to all of that, and how do you use your nursing brain and your nursing skills to do the work that you do. So in my role now, I actually do very little teaching. So it's kind of all about leadership of education, and it's multi-professional. So when it comes to revalidation, I'll be looking at, so my practice looks very different. So my practice as a nurse is in a leadership kind of capability. So I'll still look at the code and interpret it in exactly the same way as other nurses. It's just that the way in which I practice looks different. So when you think about those 4 pillars of practice, kind of education, research, leadership, clinical, you'll see that if you were to think of it, as a different scale, my scale looks very different to other people's, but other people's education pillar is going to be really low. And their leadership pillar, will be variable, whereas mine is slightly different. But yeah, we can think on a day-to-day basis how, the code applies. It's literally like, it's not because you've just said it, but it's like, oh, it's here on my desk.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, it's there to just remind me.
Yeah. Do you think newly qualified nurses can go into education straight away? Is that something that if someone is passionate, or maybe there's a teacher that's got that background in teaching, but actually they're interested in becoming a nurse, can they go from getting their nursing registration into education straight away?
I think it's kind of on an individual basis. It's not a one size fits all, because you've got to look at what's that person's background. Have they, as you said, worked in a teaching profession beforehand? Have they actually worked within health or care for 20 years, and it's only now that they've got their nursing registration and they're looking to go and support the care support workforce? Actually, they'd probably be a great person to do that type of role. So it entirely depends, I think, on the person, on their background, and then what type of education role they'd be interested in. And even if it was a kind of no, I'd take that as a not now. So actually, if you are interested and you get the advice that looking at you and your circumstances is probably not the best thing for you, but I always try and take that as it's not a hard no, it's just a not now.
Right. Oh, brilliant. So if someone didn't have that kind of if they didn't have that background, then the likeliness of them being accepted in those educational roles would be low. However, what I'm understanding is that it's not a hard no, but it's a not now. And therefore they can then go back and gain those experiences, upskill themselves, and then reapply for those roles.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's probably a lot of the time, because a lot of roles in education, we hardly have any band 5 thinking about the NHS setting education roles. So it will be having that grounding in whatever specialism you choose to do upon qualification, and then just always thinking about how can my practice relate to something in education, and having that discussions with people that specialize in education to help you pull that out, because it might not be obvious. You might kind of think, well, I don't do any education in my role, but actually you do heaps of patient and carer and client information education, and that's all relevant.
Yeah, and you also mentioned Health Education England, which I used to be a practice nurse. I've worn many hats in my nursing career, so I used to be a practice nurse, and so I know who they are. But for someone who doesn't know who they are, can you just give an explanation or just a definition of what your understanding of who NHS England are?
Yeah, so Health Education England doesn't exist anymore. As you said, it's now NHS England, and to be fair, by April next year, they'll actually be part of the Department of Health and Social Care. So, there's always big changes going on with our kind of political landscape that then influences us in health and care. But essentially, at the moment, NHS England are an arm's length body of the government that deliver and kind of have that leadership of healthcare across England in particular, and in the devolved nations, so like Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, they have slightly different bodies. But for me in education, there's a section of NHS England called Workforce Training and Education, and that's where lots of our work will come from as well, and kind of direction as such.
Yeah, brilliant. And what would you advise? So this is now just as a nurse, what would you advise anyone who's thinking of doing their nursing? What would be the first thing that you say to them? What do they have to consider, and what things would you recommend?
So I think that, you know, it's amazing that people are wanting to become a nurse. It's such a varied career that can take you in so many different ways. And I really would try and tell people not to limit themselves on what the art of the possible can be as a nurse. And just because you equally can't see it at the moment doesn't mean it doesn't exist, I think. So for me right now, the things that are particularly interesting me are around positive psychology and the impact that can have on us as individuals and us potentially as a nursing workforce. I don't see any leaders in this area at the moment, but actually, why couldn't there be in the future?
Absolutely.
Don't limit yourselves, future nurses. You know, just, you know, there are so many things that we could do, and you know, the future's gonna look really different than the past. So it's important that we, you know, learn from the past, but also keep looking forwards, because that's where we're going.
Absolutely. And I think this is why conversations like this are important, because a lot of people get into nursing only to go onto the wards, which is brilliant. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think it's the education of what else there is for nursing that is not so, it's not known. It's not something that a lot of people are aware of, especially when it comes to primary care nursing and private primary care nursing, because it is a world of its own. And even nurses in social care, that again, it is a world of its own. And I don't remember being taught about social care nursing when I was training, and I don't remember being told that it was okay to go into the community straight after nursing. So it's interesting, because I'm pretty sure that people are, you know, taught about it, because we have placements in the community, but it's just in terms of like, when you first qualify, the advice is normally go and get your clinical skills on the wards, and then specialize after you're confident with the skills that you have. And I just think sometimes that takes away from someone who probably doesn't want to go on the ward and actually would do really well going into, you know, a more leadership management role, because maybe that's what they did in the past. But I think, you know, now we've got a different view on things, in that nurses are in all sorts of different areas. And like, I work in a supported living facility as a nurse. There's only 2 of us in the whole organization, but there's a different company that we've just been acquired by, and they have more nurses than us. And so it's like, oh, I didn't know nurses could you know, setting. So it's brilliant to see that actually you don't necessarily need to go elsewhere. You can just go straight into where your passion lies, and then gain the experience that you need to then move up. The one thing I did find difficult is that with nursing, when you get to a certain level, there isn't anywhere else to go within the nursing realm, in terms of like, when you get to directorship, that's kind of it. You can't really move anything. You can't move any higher. But what I find that people do is then start up their own businesses, or start something, or give something to other people, like getting into consultancy and stuff like that. Is there anything that you do besides your nursing role that you think your skills as a nurse has helped you to get into those rooms, or you know, get those kind of opportunities?
Yeah, so a really timely question. I am literally just setting up as my own company, which is offering consultancy around education and training. Also also in terms of setting up kind of commercial income through education and training, but most more passionately coaching for nursing, and running that training based in how to be your best authentic self, which is all kind of rooted back in that positive psychology area that I mentioned. So yeah, I'm kind of by day doing my full-time role at the moment, and then by night it's like, put the other hat on and then carry on working here, building up the big picture. So but it's such an exciting thing, and I absolutely wouldn't have thought that this is where my nursing career could potentially take me. So yeah, it's an incredible kind of thinking about what the future holds as well.
Yeah, that is incredible. And I think that's really valid to know that, because actually a lot of people get put off because of the workload and because of the time constraints. If you work full time, like what time will you have to do something else? But actually, you'll be surprised. Like, you've got the time, and it's just about organization. And
I heard this lovely thing on a podcast today, and they talked about time confetti. So you may not have those big periods of time, even if you can find 5 minutes here and there. Actually, could you do something that's not kind of doom scrolling? Could you do something that is a micro piece of learning? Or could you, just before this call, I was setting up a new system for part of my new business ideas, but that's only because I just had a couple of minutes, and rather than using it unhelpfully, I just love this term, like, oh, you've got confetti time. It's just sprinkled around kind of here and there.
I love that. I'm going to use that now. Confetti time.
Yeah, it feels a bit more fun.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it definitely does. That's brilliant. And just before we go, so my aim is to encourage more nurses to also get into social care. I'm an adult nurse, so I'm in adult social care. Your role, is that considered social care or not? And is it primary care? Because it sounds like it's in the community, but then at the same time, it sounds like it's also not in the community. Yeah. So what, I guess the question is, how can we encourage more nurses to consider social care as a potential career path?
So my role isn't in social care at the moment. So I'm employed in like an acute physical health care NHS hospital organisation. However, my role spans across all sectors and all types of nursing. So, from primary care into private sector to working with charities, to working with higher education, to other hospitals across the UK. So I'm kind of really lucky in that sense to work with him. But to your second point around how do we encourage more people to think about social care as a first destination, because there are still some like terrible connotations that it's where the bad nurses go to work, which is just totally ridiculous and outdated and should be completely stopped. I think it's terrible that is still a potential thought from people. Social care is absolutely where you can go and thrive as a nurse, because if you think about it, it is a nurse-led service. You can deliver holistic nursing care across a lifespan, because as you mentioned, it goes from children's all the way up to kind of care of the elderly. It's led by nursing. Nursing is front and foremost there. You can look after the person as a whole. It is totally person-centered. So if you want to really get to know the people that you work with, as opposed to just an episode of care, both are important. But social care really enables you to live like holistically as a nurse. And I think like, wow, that must be so valuable and bring people so much joy. And then just think, how much of a difference you're making to those clients and those people that you work with. And there are some really, really inspirational people working out in social care. And so, whatever we can do to kind of raise the voice of those professionals, I think is really important.
Brilliant. I don't think I could have said it better. Thank you for that. That's amazing. And just any final thoughts, anything you want to kind of close up with?
So I guess I always try and say that working in education is a specialism in its own right. So nurse educators are specialist nurses, and should be valued for that specialist role that they do. And yeah, you just really encourage people to think about how they can live their authentic nurse self. They don't have to pigeon themselves in. You know, you can think about what are the things that bring you joy and happiness, and how do you carve that into your work as a nurse.
Brilliant, thank you. And where can people find you? So if someone is looking for coaching or consultancy services, where can they find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at KLT Consultancy, or on my website www.kltconsultancy.co.uk.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for coming on. It's been so lovely speaking to you.
Thank you.
I have learned a lot again from our conversation. I'll probably go and have a look at what NHS England is doing now as well, just to find out what the changes are, because it has been a while. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and I've really thoroughly enjoyed this interview.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been fab.